I can't hear you.
Just switching. Okay, should be better now.
Yeah, I gotcha. Okay.
Okay.
We're going to be going live in just a couple minutes.
Okay.
Uh, so hold on
I need to rearrange
your hair.
my hairs.
All right. I'm going to cut your audio, okay? I'll see you in a couple minutes.
Okay.
All right. Hey, everybody. Hello there. Today is Thursday, October 13th, 1 p.m. CET, Central European Time, and we're going to start off today's live slash Twitch slash LinkedIn conversation with another entrepreneur. I just want to call out a few things that are upcoming. Actually, specifically, something that's upcoming. So, SaaS Talk is coming up in a few days. That's going to be in Dublin. And so, actually, I think our guest today, Alex Delivet, is going to be there. I'll be there. A lot of super interesting people who are focused on growth, marketing, SaaS entrepreneurship, and other things will be there. These are always great occasions. They're great occasions to learn, they're great occasions to network. You can sometimes find prospects if your market's B2B and SaaS, but it's just a great opportunity. Um, and I think with that, I won't waste any more time, and I'll bring in our guest. There's always the thing here, the challenge on the technical side, figuring out what's going on. Oh, there we go. Okay. And with that, I'll bring in on our guest and Alex. Good to see you. Yeah, you bet. This is kind of interesting. I did get a chance to meet with you this summer. I think we were both booked up for B2B Rocks, our event. But this is actually a conversation. Originally, I wanted to have it in private, but it's okay to have this out in the air. So I was just introduced to B2B Rocks over the last 12 months. And of course, amongst the many things you've done, you started this thing some 10 years ago. Um, So this is kind of interesting thing to see how things have come full circle and where things are going, and see if you have any ideas for us. Um, you, if I remember, I was looking on your profile. So you started B2B Rocks in 2013. Is that correct? Okay. And what was your original intention? Why did you start it, and what were the goals? Hold on, hold on 1 second, Alex. Let me double check this. Some people are saying they can't hear you, Will.
Okay.
Hold on, let's go back here. Hey, everybody, can you hear Alex now? Let's do a sound test.
Can you hear me?
Is that better?
Is it better?
I don't know. Ah, okay, we can hear it. Let's go back. Okay, so we're
Okay.
saying, so let's go back to the original conversation. So just go reverse here. So we were saying this is a conversation that I originally wanted to have in private, and about B2B Rocks. Alex here started this. He confirmed this in 2013, and then that's basically he's giving the backstory on
Exactly.
B2B Rocks. Okay.
So yeah, I was telling at this time I had a blog, and I thought that in the US 500 startups were was organizing an event, and I'm trying to find the name of the event, but I can't recall. Anyway, so this event, it was dedicated to B2B and SaaS, and I think it was really interesting. So I wrote this blog post saying we should have this kind of event in France. Who wants to organize it? And lots of people went back to me saying, for sure, if this kind of event exists, we would attend. And also, I've got an email from Roxanne Varza, who now is leading Station F in Paris. But at this time, she was leading the Microsoft Accelerator in Paris.
Okay.
And so she told me, okay, if you want to organize this event at Microsoft, we can give you a venue because in our HQ, well, French HQ, we've got a big conference room. So if you want to organize it, go for it. And so that's how it starts, in fact. And then pretty quickly, so the first one was in French. And for the second one, I decided to switch it in English to position it more, I would say, European.
Hmm.
And I invited lots of interesting speakers, and that's how it starts.
Okay. I don't know if you can share this information, but do you remember what the original budget was? How much you spent?
It was nothing, like maybe 3 or 5K.
3 or 5K. Okay. So I won't. I can't.
And I think the entrance fee was like 30 euro or something like this.
30 euro.
Yeah.
Good. Well, I can't say how much our budget was last year, but it was a wee bit over 3 or 5K.
Yeah.
Um, but that's really interesting. And so it went on for 10 years. And when did you kind of you kind of moved away from B2B Rocks? And
Yeah.
when did that happen?
I think it happened end of 2016.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, what happens is, so I did one in 2013, 14. Then in 15, I didn't because at this time I was working for A-Founders, and it was too much work to do this on the side.
Mm-hmm.
And 2016, I did it in Paris, but also in Sydney. And then I realized that it would be like too time consuming to keep continuing organizing the event. Basically, I didn't want to be full time on this,
Mm-hmm.
and you know that, but when you are organizing this kind of event, you need to be full time, like nearly during 3 to 6 months.
Yeah.
Um, well, I did everything by my own. So I was like dealing with the sponsors, finding speakers, also doing all the, I would say, production stuff, doing all the marketing to fill the room. So it was lots of work, well, too much for one person,
Yeah.
and so that's why I decided to, well, to sell it to someone else.
Yeah. Well, I wasn't at those events, so I don't know the scale of the event. But I mean, just seeing what it took for our team to pull it off last year, and I had one colleague who, from stress, she loses weight, and when I get stressed, I take weight, and so at the end, I was blowing up, and she was shrinking, and so I think it was good when we pulled it off when we did, and I remember feeling after we pulled off the event a tremendous sense of pride, not so much in myself, but just in the team and their everything they did to execute that, but also a good part of relief too. You're like, phew, this is good. Things went off, and most people really enjoyed it and thought it was a unique event, so that was great. You're going to SaaS Talk in a few days, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, what are you going to be talking about?
Well, I've got a crazy program actually. So I'm doing a keynote about onboarding,
Mm-hmm.
because this is the orientation where we're going with my SaaS collect.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'm also doing the MC in the morning for the Bootstrap stage, and I will be interviewing two great CEO, the CEO of Ojar, which has been acquired by Content Square,
Mm-hmm.
I think 1 year or two,
All right.
and the CEO of, well, Gather Content. I will I will find the right name. Gather Content. So yeah, two interviews, doing the MC on the stage, plus my own keynote.
Okay. Hold on just a second. My son just came home and he's yelling to see if anybody's home. Apparently, he didn't get my email that I was going to be twitching today. Hold on one
Okay.
second. I'm twitching. That's one of the charms of working remotely. Um, that's always interesting. By the way, I just want to say I really like your where your live streaming from. You got everything looks well lit there. It makes me think, looking at my
Thank you.
background, I need a little bit more light maybe in my room. So, well, I'll have to send you an email about what lights you're using after that. Um, so you're going to be there. Are you going to come in a day early, or are you just going for the
Yeah, I
event?
will arrive on Monday.
Yeah.
Actually, well, you mentioned the setup. I'm also running a podcast in French
Mhm.
called SaaS Connection.
Mhm.
So it's, well, totally in our topic. So basically, it should be a weekly podcast
Mhm.
dedicated to SaaS, and that's why I've got all this set up. And so I will arrive on Monday, and I'm trying to do two interviews just before the beginning of the conference.
Yeah.
So pretty packed program.
Okay. Well, we'll see if it works. We're gonna try and live broadcast
Yeah,
our day on Tuesday from the event and try and engage people and talk to them about what they're finding interesting and what their experience of the event and of course what people are doing and what they're working on. Um, you I saw on your profile that you worked briefly for VCs in marketing, but for the most part, you've gone and founded companies or done your own thing.
yeah.
And I think if I'm not mistaken, you've started two SaaS companies. Is that right, or am I mistaken?
No, actually, this is the first one.
This is the first one. Okay.
Yeah, it's the first one, but I was quite close from SaaS for nearly 10 years.
Yeah.
So with B2B Rocks, then right after starting B2B Rocks, I've worked for a year and a half at eFounders,
Mm-hmm.
a French startup studio. I would say specialized in SaaS. So yeah, very very close to SaaS, and then I've done some freelancing with other SaaS like Mailjet, Stripe also in France. So well,
What was your role at eFounders? What were you doing at eFounders?
well, at this time it was pretty small, so it's quite hard. You know, it's like being a founder. You you need to do lots of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So I was, or well, I would say my title was head of operation,
Mm-hmm.
and so I was in the core team. So at eFounders, for those who don't know the concept of a studio, basically it's a startup, sorry, um, which launch other startups.
Mm-hmm.
And so you've got a core team that will work on several projects, and then you've got dedicated teams for each project.
Okay.
And so I was on the core team. So basically, my I would say day-to-day job was to identify potential funders,
Mm-hmm.
either business funders or technical funders. Talk to them, trying to to convince them to join the um, the journey. Um, it was also to recruit our own team,
Mm-hmm.
and then to work with the different funders on their own projects.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And eFounders is in Paris, right?
Yeah,
Okay. How did
it's actually in Brussels and Paris.
Brussels and Paris? Okay. Uh, what? How do they accept it? How do they know which companies they're going to work with? Is it by dossier? Like, do you file an application and then they choose you? You pitch to them and they decide whether they like your business model, and things like that.
Well, I think it changed quite a bit. Actually, I worked with them in 2014 and 15, so it was quite a long time ago, especially in startups.
Mm-hmm.
But at this time, uh, we were not looking for, I would say, project. We were looking for people, and we had our own ideas. Of course, the founders could have their own insights and or their own ideas that they would uh, try to push, but I would say the ideation phase was done internally. We were not looking for people that already started something. But I know that, so I'm really talking from the experience that I had with them, well, back in the days. But and now it changed a little bit because they are accepting people that already started a project. Well, it can be also more an acceleration than um, um well, a startup studio. So I would say right now that they try to be flexible depending on the opportunity.
Are you seeing more diversity of founders? Do you think the founder group, because by and large, I mean, one of the things I was struck by, I went to SaaStr last year in San Francisco or Silicon Valley, and one of the things I struck with is it seemed like about 95% of the founders were white guys who looked like me. And unfortunately, fortunately, they all drove Teslas too. So it seemed like a very homogenous group.
Yeah.
Do you think there's getting more diversity in this group, or do you think in the tech talent pool, do you see more diversity? Are you seeing any signs of that?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think there are some, yeah. Well, I would say for now, and at least in SaaS, it didn't change so much.
Yeah.
Maybe there are a little bit more of women,
Mm-hmm.
um, but I would say that's it for now.
Yeah.
Uh, and maybe, but I would say globally in the tech industry, I think it changed a bit, at least in Paris. I think what the family back in the days did was very good for diversity
Mm-hmm.
because they were not only looking for people coming from famous schools, and because if you, if you rewind a little bit, um, lots of VCs and lots of also studio, for example, they are looking for people coming out from very prestigious schools.
Yeah.
And if you are looking at the diversity in these schools, it's not very diverse.
Mm.
Well, there are women and men,
Yeah.
of course. But for example, from, I would say, and your origins and so on, it's not very diversified.
Yeah.
So by, I would say, promoting people that are coming from everywhere and not only from very famous school, the family did a great job on this. So I think it changed quite a bit. But also, I would say this young generation, because most of people coming from the family that are younger than we are, maybe 25 or something. Um, most of them, they are creating startups, but not in SaaS. So it's why we don't have so much diversity right now.
Yeah, that's interesting. I'm hoping, and I don't like that verb to hope, but I'm hoping that similarly to the SaaS industry expanding from the Bay Area and extending its tendrils out to the four corners of the globe, that um, these ideas will break into different social economic groups, and we'll see these. Um, I kind of what I like about our industry, about technology, about SaaS, about things, is it tends to give people more opportunity earlier. It tends to
Yeah,
create opportunity, and I think that's empowering. And I think so I
you're
think
right.
that's kind of what I hope for. But that I'm saying that as a average white
Yeah.
guy. So
Well, also, what is interesting with SaaS is, and especially in those days, where well, raising fund is is harder than maybe 1 or 2 years ago,
mm-hmm,
is um, you can have profitable startups without any funding, bootstrap,
mm,
in SaaS.
mm,
So, which is not true for, I would say, other kind of startups. Is if you are trying to launch a social media app or a dating app, you will very quickly need to raise fund, because it's very capital intensive. You need to well, you need to spend a lot in customer acquisition and this kind of thing.
yeah,
Or if you want to launch, I don't know, maybe a fintech, there is high chance that you will need also to raise money, because it can be capital intensive.
yeah,
So in but if you're bootstrap, then I would say you can come from anywhere. Uh, while diversity is an opportunity for this, and your customers, they won't care about who you are and where you're from. They are just, well, in relationship with the company. So
yeah.
I
What are
think,
the benefits? Show me. Your company right now, Collect. That's a good jumping off point, which is your company Collect. Are you guys bootstrapped? Where are you at?
yeah, we are bootstrapped.
Yeah.
Well, I say we are, but I am bootstrapped.
Okay.
And so, yeah, right now I'm a solo founder, of course, full time.
Yeah.
And sometimes, and for, I would say, special mission or needs,
Yeah.
I'm hiring freelancers.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's still, well, small, at least in term of employees.
Okay. Okay. So like, where did the idea come from for with the company you started?
Well, so maybe
Well,
for those who don't know, I can explain what we're
yeah. Why
doing.
don't you talk about what you do first, and then we'll talk.
Yeah.
Okay.
So so Collect is a SaaS that, I would say, uh, well, sorry, where you can create easily a client portal to get documents and data from your client.
Mm-hmm.
So I will give you an example. For example, let's say that you're buying an apartment. Then to borrow money, you will need to gather lots of documents and send them to banks. And so basically, what we do, we on the platform, the bank can create a list of documents that you need to send them, and so they will share with you just a link, passwordless, where you can go and drag and drop your different documents, and then they can accept or reject the different documents, and we are facilitating all the back and forth and so on. So And so, well, it's just an example, but so right now we are, I would say, mostly working with prop tech or, well, um, professional in the real estate industry,
Mm-hmm.
also with fintech, and more globally with B2B startups that need to onboard their customers.
Okay, that's interesting. Yeah, I mean, I just I can think of two use cases for that. I just recently bought glasses, and you have to provide about 5 or 6 different documents to get your glasses.
Yeah.
And so that seems like a perfect use case for that. And how they did it was fine, but it just I think from a customer experience standpoint, it wasn't top. And I think as a customer working in B2B, I, the better my experience is, the more confident I am in the company, and the more likely I am to use or reuse or continue using their products. If I have a bad experience or it isn't very streamlined experience, I'm like, and it makes me question the whole experience with the company. And then the other one is right now I'm trying to renew my French visa, my titre de séjour,
Okay.
and there's a lot of documents there. And of
Wow.
course, I don't know who makes the prefecture's website. It looks like a little person that needs help. Uh, I think it's probably running on like a Windows NT server from a long time ago.
Oh, okay.
But I'm not sure they have any money, so I don't know. You should go prospecting there. So,
Yeah.
uh,
Well, I'm not trying to, well, I know that in this kind of administration, they could need
yeah,
something like collect, but I would say business-wise, it will be like a L to try to contact them to start working with them. So I will, well, I prefer to focus on good customers for me, and which are easier to sign.
yeah. No, you want to call the American expression is low hanging fruit. You want
Yeah, definitely.
low hanging fruit. So, good. So, have you interesting and so what are, one of the things we've talked about here in the past, and I think we're going to make this a conversation because technology, the SaaS culture, this entrepreneurial culture, which is spread around the world. One of the things that's interesting about this is the culture of failure. Um, I don't want to criticize French culture, but French culture doesn't really embrace failure. It's a culture that people. Now I'm speaking in big stereotypes,
Yeah,
please,
sure.
French, but it's not a culture that where really they embraced failure, or where it's kind of like, oh, you failed, you suck.
Yeah,
And I think, like, either in other roles, or I mean, can you think of, could you share a failure, that, or is there something comfortable where you learned from and you took away?
sure, sure. Well, I mean, we do have lots of failure, big failures like business, or it can be even, I would say, project, or even losing a lead is a failure.
Yeah.
In fact. So I would say my biggest failure so far, maybe it's my first startup. It was called TripXP,
Mm-hmm.
and basically what we did, it was marketplace for experience. So what you have now with Airbnb experience. So basically, you're traveling to, maybe let's say, London or Dublin.
Yeah.
So you're going two day before the conference, and you want to have maybe a whiskey degustation,
Tasting.
or
Yeah. Okay.
tasting. Yeah, sorry, a whiskey tasting in Dublin, because
I,
that's
I
great.
love that idea. Keep going.
Yeah.
Yeah. That
And
works
so,
for me.
yeah, and so the idea was to offer this kind of experience in the marketplace, and made by local people. So not going to the whiskey museum, because you don't want that. You want something authentic, and maybe go to a very local distillery, or, well,
Yeah.
something very local. And so we start this kind of business. It was very hard. Well, so it was in 2011.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so at this time, it was, the um, collaborative economy boom. Well, it was booming. Everyone wanted to have the Airbnb for something, and we were one of the first in Europe to offer this kind of of experience. And so, and we did all the mistakes that you can do. I funded the company with two friends, very good friends, and but they were they already had a business together, and so they were not full time. I was full time, so this was the first mistake. The second mistake is none of us had technical skills, so we were relying on an agency to do the product.
Mm-hmm.
So we were not agile at all. And then we also made very, I would say, basic um, mistakes, especially with the economics, because basically, when you are trying to find the, I would say, how much you can earn with this kind of business. So basically, it was around 40 euro per person for an activity,
Yeah.
and I would say the average booking was two people,
Mm-hmm.
so it was roughly
80.
80.
Yeah.
For on that we will take our commission, but then we will need to pay taxes. We will need to also pay the I would say the fees, all this. Well, Stripe didn't exist at this time, but the PayPal fees and so on, and maybe you've got like 5 or 8 euro at the end,
Mm-hmm.
and with this you need to do customer acquisition, and you don't have any repeat business. So basically people are coming once, and then you don't have, so you need to have the payback in your customer acquisition from day one, which is nearly impossible to acquire a
Right.
new customers for this kind of low budget. So um, I would say that was the first mistake. Well, big mistake. And then we, at some point, we thought, okay, the business is not good, the margin are too low, and or we will need lots of money to do something big.
Yeah.
And so we decided to pivot, but we didn't have any. Well, as I mentioned earlier, we didn't have any technical skills. So we thought about, I would say, becoming a SaaS for the people that could be on this on the marketplace, on the supply side, and to help them manage their activity.
Yeah.
But having no technical skills, it was nearly impossible to, I would say, to become a SaaS, because we were relying too much on the agency. So at the end, we decided to close the business.
Okay. Yeah. That's interesting. It's funny because I went to vacation just for the weekend. Went out on a camper recently, and I was looking for mushrooms, and I found mushrooms. But I thought, oh, someone should come up with a thing where I could hire a guide locally and have an experience and have him teach me how to hunt for mushrooms in our dish. And so kind of had this similar idea what you're talking
Mm.
about. And now I know I can put that idea away for a little bit because
You don't even imagine how many people wanted to start this kind of business after.
yeah,
I received maybe, I won't lie, maybe 50 LinkedIn connection or email
yeah,
saying, "Okay, I'm starting this kind of business. I've seen that you did that in the past. Can you give me advice?" So
yeah,
it was like
yeah. Don't do it.
everybody wants to do that. Yeah, I think right now having Airbnb that is offering that, it's killing nearly every new ambition.
yeah,
But and to come back, and why is it working with Airbnb and not with us? It's just that when Airbnb started this, they already had like millions or maybe hundreds of millions of users, so they didn't need to acquire them. And it was just, I would say, additional. So basically you're booking your rental, and then, hey, do you want to do an activity while you are in Dublin? And that's it.
yeah.
So it
I mean,
made
that's
sense.
that's the B2C thing. That's what people always look at with B2C. They're like, well, how are you going to grow this thing? How are you going to get to your audience? How are you going to get to your customers? What's your model? And the customer acquisition costs are very high,
Yeah,
and you're so it's no, it's really challenging. But someone who like companies like Uber or like Airbnb who already have a super established brand and already in touch with gazillions of consumers, it's much easier for them to start that. And of course, they have revenue coming in, which helps too.
Mm.
So it's interesting. Um, your company, so you use a lot of you use a lot of people to kind of work on projects. Do you use any platforms to find talented people? Do you use anything like I see on YouTube? I get lots of Fiverr announcements. Have you ever gone on Fiverr and gotten anybody?
Yeah, I've already hired people on Fiverr and Upwork and Malte in France.
Yeah.
Depending, I would say, first, um, it depends on the kind of job that you want to give them.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I do remember like while hiring people for maybe 10 $10 back in the day on Upwork to just I would say uh, well, I've got lots of business cards from conference, and then but you are collecting them, and well, I would say physically, but then it's nearly impossible to do anything with them because you need to put them in a spreadsheet or something.
Yeah.
So I hired someone like to. While I took the photos of all the business cards that I had in the office,
Mm-hmm.
I think it was around like 500 business cards.
Yeah.
Yeah, I put everything in a Dropbox, and then I have asked someone for €10 or $10 to just put all the names and everything in a spreadsheet. So I think for this kind of stuff, it's quite magical how far you can go. But I would say the downside of Upwork is um, most people are just speaking English.
Mm-hmm.
So if you want to have something like more in French, then using Fiverr or Malt is better.
Okay. Okay. So yeah. So it's maybe better if you need more French. But your website. Looking at your website, your website's all English centric.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, yeah. For Collect, we did only uh, only English. Of course, we do have customers in France.
Mm.
I would say naturally because word of mouth is easier in French and so on. But the goal is to be global from day one. Um,
That
and
that's really interesting because that's something that's people are starting from day one. Did you put in to build a global business? And I think that's really, and that means English first. It also means a billing solution. Did you start? What are you using to manage your billing and
yeah,
subscription management?
so I'm using Stripe, and all the pricing is in dollar.
Yeah.
Um, Actually, I would say
Stripe doesn't offer. Okay, can you also have euro pricing, or is it by default dollar?
it's by default. Well, not by default. If the only currency that you can have
Oh,
on Collect is dollar.
okay.
Um, the well, the idea for me when I did that is if you are, let's say, well, if you are European and you see a pricing in dollar, you don't really mind because you're used to buying dollar.
Yeah.
But the opposite is not true. If you are an American and you are, well, now living in Europe, but um, when you're for most American, they don't know I would say the equivalent of euro in dollar. So they will need to think about it. They will probably need to go on Google to see the equivalent and so on. So I wanted to have only one currency and collect. So that's why I did it this way. And also, I do have some customers, for example, in Australia, in lots of different countries, or in Canada, or
Yeah.
this kind of country, and they're used to. Well, everyone is used to know the conversion with dollar, which is not true in the opposite way.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. And also, as a European, if you see something's in dollar, you're less likely to question like, is this a global company or anything like this. I think it's just you're more confident, and if someone has to go get off your website and go look and see what the conversion is rate for euro,
Mm.
you've already introduced a constraint. You've already introduced another step. You've already introduced another pain point. And by default, like you said, more people are going to think in dollars. Okay, really interesting.
Mm.
Um,
After I know that, I would say good practice is to have different pricing based on the region. So basically, for the US, or I would say for the global market, you will be in dollar, and for the local market, you will be in euro.
well,
But I would say technically, and also because I did all the billing at the beginning of the project.
yeah,
So at this point, it was quite different from um, what Stripe offers now.
yeah.
And so, yeah, I wanted to keep it simple. That's why I did this way.
Yeah. Well, simplicity. I think if you're, a small shop, simplicity is is an obligation. You got to keep it simple. By the way, just so you know, up on the chat room, I put up use collect your
Oh, thank you.
URL. So if you get a chance, go check it out. And is there? I mean, as people put up their documents, if their dossier is complete, and you've got all the documents, my guess is you get a notice saying, "Okay, great, everything's up here. You can move forward."
Sure.
Yeah,
So well, we've got lots of options, and it's very highly configurable. So basically, first you can have, I would say, an intermediate step where you can validate and reject all the documents and data that have been filled or uploaded on the portal.
hmm
And then once a portal is says completed, so you can of course download everything, but you can also trigger a lot of different things in other tools. So basically, we do have an API, we do have Zapier integration, we also have an integration with HubSpot.
hmm
And so basically, the idea is once the request is marked as completed,
hmm
then you can, for example, push all the data or all the documents into your CRM
mm.
or into another tool. And this is like very powerful.
Yeah, it's so interesting. I think that's one of the really interesting things about our industry is that I'm starting to think of SaaS as like Legos.
Yeah.
And so you can just snap all this stuff together. And so I have what I call my holy trinity: people, processes, and philosophy. And of course, your management has the vision and the philosophy, and then they go out and get the people they get. And then with these SaaSes now, organizations really define the value they create by how good their processes are. And so when I work with an organization whose processes are great, like they're onboarded, like my last experience where I just give them an A plus 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 was with HubSpot,
Hmm.
and they're really pricey solution, but gosh, they've got a great knowledge center, and their onboarding process and a lot of stuff they do is really great. And so for me, that gives me a lot of confidence. For someone who is going to work with it on the marketing side.
Mm.
And so, but also everything plugs into everything now. You got Zapier, and then you've got so many direct integrations with HubSpot as well, and then same thing with Stripe. And so people, buy these pillars, these different for billing or what have you. For that matter, just so anybody out there, I'm going to be speaking with BillWork today. And we're going to talk about their recent report in a webinar later today at, I think it's 5 p.m. CET. We're doing a webinar with BillWork on billing and subscription management and how things are evolving. They just produced a big report, and we're going to talk about that.
Interesting.
But there's yeah, it's just, I mean, that you can do so many different things on the process side, and if you get really good at implementing great processes, you save your team time, and you can out execute organizations. And to me, it kind of makes me think of like Ukraine versus Russia. Like sometimes I work with big organizations, but their processes are bad, and then you work with a smaller one, and their processes are good, and it kind of reminds me of like Xerox and Polaroid, and you're like, over the long term, if this big company can't get its head out of its bleep, they're going to have a big problem. So that's really
Yeah.
interesting. Are there any other SaaSes? Are there any other things that you use? Because
Uh,
yeah,
I'm using lots of SaaS, I would say.
yeah.
I think one of the most time-saving SaaS for me is Crisp.
Crisp. What?
Yeah, Crisp.
What's
Cri-
crisp?
Crisp is a chat that you can have on your own website,
Okay.
and basically, well, it's very simple, but it works just really fine. And for me, it's very helpful because I can have all the support ticket, well, not ticket, but support messages
Okay.
directly from the customers, and I can access to them, of course, when I'm in the office, but also on my mobile. So it's very handy for me, and I'm using it all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, Slack. Well,
Slack. Yeah.
yeah, even if it's not my team, I'm connected with lots of people on Slack.
Okay.
Zapier is good to do some automation.
Mm-hmm.
Um, well, I should use it more, but yeah, well, it's still save lots of time.
Mm-hmm.
What else can I
I should
mention?
use it more. Yeah, there's lots of things we should do,
Yeah,
but you have to focus on what.
yeah, but you know, well, I'm saying I should use it more because I think um, Zapier is a good example of a good investment.
Yeah.
Basically, um, you will probably need 1 hour to automate something, so you need to find this hour.
Yeah.
But it will have a good ROI very quickly.
Yeah.
So that's why I think you need to force yourself to use it more and to be like more clever on this kind of software.
Yeah. It's interesting. What you so you're bootstrapped now. Are you looking for funding, or
No,
you don't want to get funded? You want to
so,
keep bootstrapping.
yeah. So, well, at least I would say one of the biggest upside of being bootstrapped is you can still change your mind later, which is quite hard when you do the opposite way. Basically, if you raise funding, and then you decide, well, you can decide to look for profitability and to stop raising, but in the fact, looking for profitability can be quite tough later on. So being bootstrap, I would say I have all the cards in hand, so I can decide to keep bootstrapping, collect, or if at some point I think it's a good, well, I've got a good momentum, and I think it makes sense to raise money, I can still try to raise money. But for now, I think it's good. Um, Also, I was looking for well, I would say it differently. Um, when you raise money, your job as a founder will be, well, it's not only that, but part of your job will be to manage your board, and
Mm-hmm.
also I would say, to focus on people, because basically you will hire your team and make it grow, and you won't do the job by yourself. Most, well, the other people will, and you will be there to make it happen. And this is not something that I'm getting joy from. So this is, well, there are people that are very good in management,
Yeah.
and they like to do that. I like to do stuff. I like to do development. I like to do demos, but I don't like to do one-on-one. so so
Well,
I
you're
think it was important to know what you like to do on that.
you're also managing up, right? Which is harder because you're managing people that have invested money in your company. And so
Yeah.
these are people that have typically are very demanding people. These are people typically with egos.
Hmm.
These are typically people from big schools, and it's a challenging job to manage investors. I think for any company, and especially if you things aren't going as promised or as everyone would like, and then when they start asking questions, because a lot of times, like, I don't know if you've been involved. I've been involved with several startups and seen how the boards get involved.
Yeah.
And VCs, like so many of us, they have good intentions, But they're not going to know the business anybody better than anybody who works in the company or has worked in that industry for years or anything like that. So sometimes so it's complicated, I guess
Yeah,
is
I
what I'm
think.
trying to say.
Yeah, yeah. I think first it really depends on your VCs.
Yeah.
It's very hard to, I would say, to make a global assumption, but um, and I would say very good VCs, but they are also investing in the best deals.
Yeah.
But very good VCs, uh, they are, I would say, supporting the company,
Yeah.
not pushing. Well, not asking too many things that is, I would say, killing the company.
Yeah.
But bad VCs can be really toxic. So I think it really depends on your VCs. But yeah, it takes time. Sometimes they can really, I would say, help to move the needle, and they can really help the company to become like a very great company,
Yeah.
and they can kill it. So yeah, that's why. Well, on one side, I think having this kind of relationship, sorry, with um, third parties can be interesting because uh, it makes you accountable. It makes you, well, well, for example, I think you're working faster on this kind of thing, but at some point you will maybe spend 50% or 70% of your time on this. So
Yeah.
I don't know.
And if you've ever seen a founder or a CEO prepare for a board meeting with VCs, that person is typically stressed out for about the week prior to that meeting. That's taken up like 90% of their time. And since CEOs also or founders are also often working on recruiting and selling and 10 other different challenges that the organization is
Mhm.
working, it's interesting. But it sounds like you got a good plan. If things work out well, if you see a road to being a profitable company, if you're in a good position, kind of like judo, you'll use that and leverage. And also, honestly, right now may not be the best time. Right now, given the markets, you may have to give up more equity than you would like to get money at this point. So it might not
Yeah,
be. Yeah.
yeah. Well, there are lots of companies that were started like in 2003, 2004,
Mm-hmm.
just after the dot-com bubble burst.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm pretty sure that right now it's good timing to start your company, or to keep it grow like I'm doing.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm pretty sure that maybe in a few years, the market will come back, and it will be good timing for us. So
Yeah. Yeah. I don't think so. We last week we had Ben Costantini. I don't know if you know Ben, but
I know him. Yeah,
you know Ben.
yeah.
But we were talking a little bit about some of these things about the market and our perception of the market. And I actually remember I was working in tech during the dot bomb slash era. And there was a hilarious website which no longer exists. It's up on the wiki comments, but it was called fuckedcompany.com. And people would post like what their layoff notices were for the company, or they would post internal memos of like strategy of the company. And I guess my point to all this is that technology and SaaS and .com companies, that the thinking has matured so much. We're so much further along. The investors are, and also the people that create these. A lot of the companies back then in the bomb area were thought of. They didn't even have a revenue model.
Yeah.
They didn't know how they were going to generate revenue. And if you go to a VC right now and you're like, we're not sure how to, you're lucky if he doesn't throw you out the door. You've got to know how you're generating revenue. There was one, petfood.com, and like they got like 60 million, and I was like, 60 million to buy pet food? And it's like, I just buy it when I go to my grocery store, or
Yeah.
it's not like
A web van.
it's not there. Yeah, it's not something I really like think like, oh, or there's not this huge economy of scale that makes it that interesting to buy dog food. Could never understand that. And what was the other one? drcoop.com for healthcare stuff. And Dr. Coop was a former like top doctor in the United States, was the Surgeon General. and he gave information on that, and they had no business model, and he raised like hundreds of million, and they burned through hundreds of million. And I'm like, don't get it. Interestingly enough, here's an anecdote from that time you might appreciate. There was a company that was started by Mark Andreessen, who's a really famous investor. Andreessen Horowitz, I think that's their investment group, and he started. He built one of the original browsers, Netscape. Did all sorts of amazing stuff, and he started a company called LoudCloud. And LoudCloud, what they did is they hosted enterprise applications in the cloud. So if you had Microsoft Office or SAP or something like that, or Exchange, they hosted it for you in the cloud, and that was actually the predecessor to SaaS.
Hmm.
So it didn't work. His business, it failed. But and there was this whole argument at that time, like, does it even make sense to have computing off-site, thin
And I
client?
think the company he mentioned in his book, right?
I don't know. I haven't read his book.
You well,
This is good reading, people. I'm gonna have to go order this book.
well, this one, but well, this one is in French, but of course it's in English.
Yeah,
It's Hard Thing About the Hard Thing.
yeah.
It's a very famous book, and this is a company he's talking about in his book, and very interesting. If you haven't read it, I
Okay,
really recommend it.
okay. Thank you. Yeah, someone mentioned a really interesting book today to me about they called it the Bible. It was something like structuring SaaS revenue. And
Predictable revenue.
what's that?
Predictable revenue.
No, it's hold on. If I have to, I don't know. I'll have to come back to it. But
Okay.
it's this person said this book changed their life, and he calls it the Bible. And so
It could be this one.
yeah, and
I,
so
yeah.
yeah.
For the in the SaaS industry, there's this book. So hold on. You should have it. Uh, well, I don't know where it is, but it's called Predictable Revenue,
Yeah.
and basically, it's been written by Aaron Ross,
Mhm.
um, who was one of the first team lead at Salesforce. I would say in the early days, and he went from maybe 10 million IRR to 100 million IRR, and so, and he wrote this book with all the, I would say it was nearly their internal playbook, sales playbook, and so it has been published, I would say nearly 10 years ago, and it quickly became the, I would say, the sales playbook for lots of startups, especially in SaaS.
Yeah.
And for example, so when I used to work at eFounders, one of our company at this time was Aircall,
Mhm.
and so I offered it to Jonathan,
Mhm.
who was leading the sales team at this point, and so, and for a few years, it was like the Bible at Aircall. So
That's
that,
interesting.
it can be this book.
That's really interesting. Um, I think it's well, okay. I'll have to look up the title of this. I think I met Jonathan last year. Is he? Any case, Aircall's a really interesting company. That's a
Yeah.
really interesting company, and that's what I noticed is a lot of the recent companies, like Aircall, has done a really good job of levering partnerships.
Hmm.
So I think we you know last year we were talking a lot about product led growth. So designing your product, and for me, product goes back to my holy trinity of people, processes, and philosophy. But so that the whole experience is just great. So there's that, but I think also the other thing is partner led growth, which is a lot of people. Dave one, they're like, okay, how can we take this product and work with other partners in the ecosystem to grow it? So like you built an integration to Zapier, you built an integration to HubSpot, and very early, those are just very those are decisions taken very early, which are important growth decisions.
Yeah. Actually, the I would say there are different steps in the partnership strategy. The first one is you'll start building, I would say, global integration,
Mm-hmm.
basically the API or the Zapier integration. So you can do whatever you want with that.
Right.
The second one is you're doing native integration, because I would say by doing this, you won't need a middleman. So you won't need to have Zapier, or you won't need to have the API in the middle. So you can, for example, collect with HubSpot natively, and maybe later uh, collect with all the CRM, and it makes sense. And then the last step, and that's what Aircall did, and all the companies start doing, is to create an ecosystem around you. And so basically, you're starting to create a marketplace, and you're starting to create everything to, I would say, to encourage other vendors to integrate with you.
Mm-hmm.
And it becomes very powerful, because at the beginning you need to, well, especially for the second step, you need to do all the stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So it will take time, for example, to, if I want to build an integration with Salesforce, it will cost me a lot of money, because I will need to maybe hire a developer, spend a few months on the integration.
Mm-hmm.
But when you reach a certain level, like Aircall did, then you're trying to be very interesting for other vendors, and they will spend money to be on your marketplace. So I would say that's very powerful, and I think it's also helping them to grow so fast.
Yeah, it's interesting. I like that. So build a integration into an integration tool. That way you get access to a lot of things very quickly. Then strategically build out your native integrations to people who can help you grow, and you can get on their marketplaces like HubSpot and Salesforce. That's really interesting. That's worthy of a blog to be written, and then from there build your own marketplace.
Yeah.
Um, that's super interesting. Um, I'm looking at my questions. We got into our favorite reading. I read a book. One of my colleagues gave me a book, The Theory of Constraints,
Okay.
a talk, and that was a book that made me think really differently about. And I like the analogy he used in the book. He talks about doing sales demos, and the company only had a certain amount of bandwidth to do sales demos, and they had already blocked out their bandwidth to do sales demos. And he's like, well, you don't need to do any more prospection, because if you don't have bandwidth to do demos, you can't sell anything.
Mm.
And that seems like a very common sense thing, but gosh, a lot of people overlook really simple common sense things like that. So make sure as you map out your sales process, and I don't even like the term. I like the term more like customer engagement process, or because I think sales, no one wants to be sold to. We want to be helped.
Yeah.
I think that's the thing you need to understand, is no one likes being sold to. We want to be helped. So show you how do you help me? How can you benefit me? And then you've got my attention. But if you really got to do a good job mapping that out. Um, I had a really interesting experience the other day, and I'd like your take on this. I was talking to a SaaS that I was interested in maybe using, and their SDR, who I spoke with, knew absolutely nothing about the product and very little about the benefits.
Oh.
And so, and I guess my takeaway was that is, do you have any SDRs yet, or are you all on your own?
On all on my own.
But have you ever had that experience of working with an SDR for another organization and they didn't really know what they're doing?
Well, I can see that lots of time, because I think people are trying just to, well, is right now, I don't know, but maybe 1 or 2 years ago, people were just trying to grow,
Mm-hmm.
and they were ready to make anything for that.
Mm-hmm.
And it includes to have, for example, okay, let's just hire more SDR, not really looking for to train them and to make them work well, but just
More.
more, send more emails, do more calls.
It
and
it sound it
we don't
sound
really care about the transformation rate.
it sounds like the Russian military strategy. Just throw more people at the problem.
Yeah,
Uh, yeah.
but and I think that I would say looking for profitability, this is something that won't work anymore. You need to be more like, I think right now it's better to be a sniper than on the field. You know, and having more soldiers to keep your image is not really good. But if you've got like one very good sniper, then it will help you. So instead of doing maybe 100 calls every day, just maybe do 10 very well prepared, very well where you know the product very good
Mm.
and the purpose. And I think it will be transforming better than doing I would say crazy things.
Yeah, there's. I think I read a report. I forgot who it was, but it was something about fit. And they said if a prospect fits your ICP,
Hmm.
I think. Oh yeah, it was a company that was doing something like 60 million in ARR, and they said that their statistics show that if a customer fits their ICP, and expresses need, their close rate is about 3.5%.
Hmm.
If the customer is outside their ICP, their close rate is 0.2%. So
Oh,
0.2%.
yeah.
And so but the interesting part about that is they said is that even if they close that customer, that customer won't stay. And that customer comes up, instead of being a profit center, their customer comes up becomes a loss center, because they have to spend a lot of time helping that customer or addressing problems with the customer. So they create a dissatisfied customer who's going to badmouth them,
Mm,
who's going to cost them a lot of money and leave. So I guess that makes a lot of sense. What you said is what I'm trying to say there.
yeah.
Um,
Yeah, I think when you try to, I would say, to force a sale, it's never good, and there are very low chance that in the end people will like a product. So I think well, it's better to, you know, just to focus on your real customers.
yeah,
But it happened sometimes to me. I mean,
yeah.
sometimes, you know, you're doing a demo, you know that you could close it, but people won't be satisfied with your product
Hmm.
because they are looking for a feature that you don't have, or this kind of thing. And yeah, and I think it's better to be honest and to say, okay, I think we're not the right fit for you, maybe to recommend something else, even if it's your competitor. But it's not very good if you just try to sell it, and then in the end it will turn a few months later because your solution is not the right one.
But if somebody recommends that I go elsewhere or I look at the competition, because they say it may be a better fit, my respect for them, and my confidence level going forward, if I ever encounter them or think about that company and come back to them, I feel like I can really trust them at that point. Um, where do you go? Where do you go to learn? I mean, what percentage of your time do you spend expanding your brain and learning about new stuff?
That's a good question. Yeah. I think the first one is maybe it will surprise you, um, but I would say my main channel to learn is my podcast by doing the interviews, because basically I will met lots of founders or lots of people working in SaaS,
Yeah.
and so, and when I've got something that uh, is interesting to me, I will ask the question. So I think this is the first, for me this is third channel.
That's
Yeah.
awesome.
And then so and for example, if I well um let to come back to this image, we talked about integration before,
Mm-hmm.
and of course with Collect I've got lots of questions about integration. Should I do integration with all the CRM, or should I focus, for example, only an HubSpot.
Mm-hmm.
Well, lots of questions that you don't have. I would say lots of people you can ask these questions to, and so by doing the podcast, it's well, if I'm just in front of this kind of question, I can say, okay, I will invite him because I know that they did a big job on this, and so I will ask the question.
Yeah, I think working. I've only our thing has only been going a short time now, but it's been really educational and nourishing.
Mm.
The word I would use is nourishing. It's been really interesting.
Yeah, and then to give maybe more reference to the audience, I'm I like to read books. So even if I'm not reading everything, um, I would say do some speed reading, just having the idea of the book. So I will probably buy a book every month
Mm-hmm.
about SaaS and startups. Then I'm also reading sometimes blog posts. For example, I like the OpenView
Mm-hmm.
blog. So OpenView is a VC firm, and I think they did a great job to about product-led growth.
Mm-hmm.
So this is interesting. And then I would say depending on the well, on what's coming up, I can read random blog posts, but
Okay.
uh, I'm still a good reader.
You're still a good reader. My question is, do you have kids?
I
All
do.
right, you do. Okay, and you say you have a job, you start a
Yeah,
company,
yeah.
and you're doing a blog
So
or
that's
a
why I'm not reading the full book. I'm just
yeah.
just trying to go fast.
I've been meaning to check out. There's a service called Blinkist. I think it's
Yeah,
and they kind of review books and give you the macro ideas of the book. And I think something like that is probably better for me at this point. And maybe if it's like something I really want to read, then go back and read it.
yeah.
But that's interesting. What about the question that comes up? A lot of founders struggle with this. A lot of tech employees struggle with this. What about work life balance? Is that in on your horizon? Is that on your radar?
So that's a good question. Well, so I'm a dad for now 2 years, and of course it changed like all your priorities in life.
Yeah.
Um, and so well, in the morning, I'm going to drop my daughter to the kindergarten. So I would say I have to do the morning. Then in the evening, sometimes I'm staying quite late at the office. What I don't, well, what is quite hard for me, well, I'm doing it sometimes, but I have to admit that it's harder than it used before. Is to come back home, like have dinner, and then to work again. Like after dinner, most of the time I'm like out. So I would say this is my main difficulty, and then I'm trying not to work on the weekend.
Yeah.
Uh, but yeah, sometimes I have to.
Yeah.
Uh, and and this year, and for the first time for like maybe 5 years,
Hmm.
uh, I got real holidays. I took 3 weeks, and I only work, three times 2 hours. So
Wow.
which was like real holidays. Um, so, but I think also it depends on your business and the stage you're in. You know, Collect is now on the market for 3 years. The revenue is growing. It, I would say, it's becoming easier. Well, it's not easier on, I would say, every aspect of the business, but at least it's I would say uh, well, I have the head out of the water. I don't know if it's something that we can say in English, but at the beginning you're like overflowed,
Yeah.
and after you can start breathing,
Yeah.
and so I would say that's the current situation with the business. So yeah, I'm more and more concerned with the lifestyle balance.
Well, good. I think I spoke to another founder and listened to his talk a few months back, actually at B2B Rocks, and Lloyd Lobo, and he's serial founder, and of course he got COVID and almost died.
Oh,
And I saw photos of him when he was at university, a really fit guy, and then he got heavy working as a founder, and he just said, look, he said, you can't ignore this stuff. He says, one, it's about your health, but two, it's about being a great founder and a great teammate and these other things. And he's like, and it's also, he talked about the mental health impl-
yeah.
implications as well. There's a mental health aspect as well. So that's really interesting.
But I do remember that in the past, well, I used to work in a company not related to tech at all,
Mm,
and we had this well figure that we were using all the time, which was a tripod,
mm,
and we were talking about the tripod for, I would say, mostly for product, and so the idea of a tripod is, if you want to keep stability, you can move only 1 feet of the tripod
mm-hmm.
at the time. If you are trying to move 2 foot,
Yeah, 2 feet.
2 feet, two
Yeah.
feet, 2 feet at the same time, then you will be very unstable.
Mm,
But if you move only 1 foot at a time, you keep stability. So, for example, if we come back to product,
mm-hmm.
if you change, for example, distribution, but you're not changing the product or the pricing, that's fine. You keep stability, and it's the same, in fact, for your personal, I would say, personal and professional life. You've got your job, that's 1 feet.
Mm-hmm.
You've got your health, and then I would say you've got your family and love.
Mm-hmm.
And it's very hard to move 2 feet or more at the same time. So if you are very stable in your job and you have a good health, then you can focus to change. For example, if you are single,
Yeah.
you can focus to try to find someone.
Yeah.
But there is very low chance that you can change your job, uh, for example, change your lifestyle to be more healthy,
Yeah.
and also uh, that you are looking for love at the same time, because I would say it's too much to
It's just
do.
it's just too
Yeah,
much. Yeah. That no, I like that the analogy. That's a really interesting way to think about it, which is yeah. I think that's and when I look back over the course of my life, whenever I had too many feet off the ground or was I think we also the analogy we use is juggling. We say we're trying to juggle too many balls.
yeah,
You can juggle 2 or 3 balls, but you can't juggle 4 or 5.
yeah. So
So or most people
and
can't.
yeah,
So
and so, for example, to come back to your, I would say, health situation.
yeah.
So right now, I think, well, I should um, be more healthy and do more sports.
Yeah.
And for a long time, it was uh, quite hard because I was focusing on my company, trying to make it happen. And so it's very hard, to be um, very good at sport, for example. Well, not good, but very to do that regularly, and to work on the at the same time. So I would say right now, because business is going better, I could, for example, start to move another
Hmm.
foot.
Okay. Yeah, it's like I won't go into it, but conversations about language. Listen, what's the name of your blog? I mean, your podcast,
My podcast is called SaaS Connection.
SaaS Connection, and is it SaaS Connection? And is can they find it? Where can they find it?
Well, you can find it on, I would say, all the podcasting apps.
Okay.
So it can be Apple Podcast, Spotify. I don't remember all those, but Android Podcast, I think. Yeah,
Okay. Okay. And what about is it in English or is it in French?
it's in French.
Okay, it's in French. So for our French people out there, if you want to hear about SaaS in French, I
Exactly.
recommend. Yeah.
Thank you.
And I'll go. Maybe I can practice my French that way. I get inspired.
Yeah, it's a good way to do. Well, I did that with a podcast about SaaS in English, so just to practice my English.
Um, Just that's great. You're doing a great job. What about mentoring? Were you fortunate enough early on in your career to have a mentor, or have you had mentors, or do you have a mentor?
Um, I would say I did have. Uh, I don't have any more. So I mentioned that I worked in not in the tech industry before.
Mm-hmm.
I spent nearly 5 years in the healthcare industry.
Okay.
Um, and one of my job was to be the what we would call now chief of staff
Mm-hmm.
of one of the of one of the CEO of the company,
Mm-hmm.
and so I was very close to this man, and yeah, and I learned so much. So he was a mentor, I would say, mostly on a day-to-day basis. Like he learned me so much.
Yeah.
So it was really really interesting working with him.
Mm-hmm.
And then after, I would say in the tech industry, I didn't have any mentors, but
Yeah. Did he take you under his wing? Did he know he was mentoring you, or was it just his job as a manager? He just managed you really well.
I think it was more like managing
Yeah.
and informal. You know, it was not okay. I will bring you to this point,
Yeah.
but it was interesting because every time we had a discussion about, I don't know, how should we do that in the company,
Mm-hmm.
um, it was also explaining uh, how we thought. So you know, you learn how to think.
Yeah, that's interesting. So he kind of provided the backstory of like, okay, this is
Exactly.
what I'm doing, and this is why I'm doing it, and
Mm.
so that's this is so useful. Just one question. So you're a founder, or I always say that just one question, but there's always more questions. So you're a founder. Did you need to make a conscious step to become a founder and to start your own business, or is that just something you did naturally? I mean, was there a moment like you felt like you jumped off a diving board into the water? I think I don't know. Maybe this is me projecting, but I just curious about that.
Yeah, it was totally natural.
Was natural.
Yeah, totally.
Okay.
And actually, I did some, I would say, um, very small business even before when I was, you know, in business school. I already work. Well, I was already working and having some project and so on. So it's like something very natural to me.
Okay, that's really interesting. Well, listen, I want to remind you all. So his company is called Collect. The website is usecollect.com. His podcast is SaaS Connection. It is in French, so if you're in English, it'll be well. It's a good way to practice your French if you're thing there, and so you can hear a little bit about what's going on in the French thing. He'll be at SaaS Talk
Yeah,
in Dublin next week. I'll be there too. He's gonna buy me a beer now,
of course.
if we can find a time, and just want to thank you. Thank you for sharing this. For me, it was really interesting. I think for audience, it's going to be really valuable. And thank you so much.
Thanks for the invitation. Was really great. And just and to the audience, just ping me if you are around next week.
Okay.
I will be happy to pay
Okay.
a beer too. So,
Okay.
so that will be great. And if you are speaking French and you do have a SaaS, you can also ping me because I will try to record some episode for the podcast next week when I will be in Dublin. So just ping me, and we'll try to figure out.
Okay, that's great. Well, listen, once again, thank you so much. And I'm just going to take advantage while you're on here just to tell everybody later today at 5 p.m., we're going to be doing our webinar with Bill Work. We're going to be talking about what's going on in the subscription industry. We're going to be live streaming from SaaS Talk as well. Who knows? We might have. We might have you back on. You'll maybe stop by our booth and see us there. And then next week we have Max. I think it's Panavwan, who is head of
Yeah,
Winning by Design, which is incredible kind of like growth consultancy, which they have offices pretty much around the world now. And they
I
help.
think so. Yeah.
They San Francisco, Paris, New York, London, like all the big stops, and they help a lot of organizations grow their businesses. So we're gonna have him on and talk a little bit about the methodology of growth and what companies can do to really succeed. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Steve.
All right, bye bye.
Bye.
Good. Well, listen, that was a really enjoyable show. He's a great guest. That was a lot of fun. And we'll see you all soon. Our next show will be on Tuesday. We're going to be doing kind of a full day. So full day from Tuesday will be on there. And that's all for today, folks. That's all.